art form. One flourished, then died. The comedy to be not heard. Many believed it the greatest comedy of all. It was to be found on every screen of every theater every day. It made the 20s roar. We believe make you laugh as loudly as the audiences of so long ago. For the next 90 minutes, you will be part of a world a third of a century younger, when comedy was king. As in the bygone days of vaudeville, if anything or anybody meets with your approval, we hope you will applaud. Somewhere, ghosts may be listening. We begin where American screen comedy began, Max Sennett's old Keystone studio. Charlie Murray is the director. The footloose hero is a 24-year-old movie newcomer named Charlie Chaplin. The year is 1914. At this year's beginning, Chaplin, an obscure stage comedian, made his first screen appearance. During the year, he turned out a staggering total of 35 pictures. By the year's end, he had become the most famous comedian in the world. The young Charlie Chaplin, swept so swiftly to fame, was to grow into a figure of controversy. But in 1914, all that lay undreamed of decades in the future. Whatever one may think of Chaplin, these films, made so long before the troubled times, are blameless. A replacement is quickly recruited. Walrus-mustached Chester Conklin, the little eternal loser in big pants, another Keystone immortal. So Charlie bids the studio a flying farewell, to end up as Charlie usually ended up, a homeless, jobless, friendless vagabond. We iris in on a scene of touching domestic bliss. Whoops! The beloved Mabel Norman plays Charlie's pocket-picking wife. Mabel discovers a mash note from one of Charlie's admirers. Like most of the Keystones, the Chaplin films were shot script, off the cuff. The actors ad-libbed their stuff as they went along. Scenes requiring split-second timing were made in this fashion, and they were rarely taken more than once. The reason for this method was economy, but the result was sometimes a brand of spontaneous fun unapproached since the passing of silent comedy. Cast out, Charlie is once again the homeless wanderer into endless trouble. He quickly stumbles onto one of the town's better restaurants. Take a look at that sign of 40 years ago and weep. In a time when the world's funny bone was far less touchy than it is now, Charlie displayed the same solicitude for old men as he did for babies. Charlie's dainty dinner companion is Mac Swain, famed Ambrose of the old Keystones. Like most of the films produced during Charlie's busy first year, this picture was directed by Chaplin himself. Coming up is the most famous of the thousands of comedy inventions originated in the Keystone Studios, the pie in the face. Meanwhile, spurred on by that mash note, Mabel's off in hot pursuit. If anyone gets mashed, it'll be Charlie. Of the comedians who abounded in comedy's golden age, a handful achieved greatness, and 3 of them, in the opinion of critics, were so completely original in their portrayals as to scale the heights of pure genius. You will meet all 3 in this picture. One is Chaplin. Revving up are sleek racers of 1914, among them a unique propeller car. There was hardly a local race, parade, or fire that failed to bring out a Keystone company eager to utilize the crowds and excitement as a free backdrop. In this early film, Charlie could still work almost unnoticed among the spectators, yet he had already mastered most of his familiar mannerisms, including that wonderful skidding turn. Flirtatious Charlie has just begun to make time with Mabel when her boyfriend, myopic, bristling little Chester Conklin, tries to fracture their romance. It's a trite situation, one used over and over again in the Keystones. But notice how Chaplin builds it up, brightening what could be the most humdrum of scenes with a whole library of comedy improvisations. Close-ups of the young chaplain are rare. This is one of the best. He was soon to bid Keystone goodbye, increasing his salary 20-fold in 2 years. The chaplain's story of fabulous success and fabulous trouble was just beginning on this bright September day, 45 years and 2 world wars ago. Across the decades from a sentimental age peers Mabel Normand with her partner, Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. As Fatty and Mabel, they were beloved by the fans of 1916, and their appeal is still apparent in this little valentine of a comedy which has remained fresh and charming through the passing years. Of course, there must be a villain. He's jealous Al St. John, the boy Mabel left behind. Fatty and Mabel are newlyweds and live in a cottage by the sea in a day before beaches were littered with beer cans. At least one graying moviegoer remembers viewing this tender domestic sequence as a child. Across the lives of Mad Mabel and jovial Fatty alike were to pass the shadows of scandal, ill fortune, and early death. But that, too, was the undreamed-of future in these gay Keystone days. At Keystone, the versatile Fatty directed his own films. And even the old master, D.W. Griffith himself, never produced a more tender scene than this phantom kiss of long, long ago. Later that night, the storm. In stalks Al St. John and his skulking toadies. So Mabel prefers Fatty to him. He'll show them both. His dastardly deeds screened by the sounds of wind, rain, and surf, he'll float their cheesebox cottage to its doom at sea. Comes the dawn. My goodness, wonders Fatty, did Mabel leave the bathtub running? Do the television-fed kids of today ever thrill as did the kids of old, crouched down with eyes big in the magic darkness of the local bijou, as scenes like this staggered their imaginations? A glance out of the window tells the awful story. They've drifted miles to sea. How can they be saved from a watery grave? Fatty has an idea. He'll send Fido with a note, if only he can find a pencil. Hurry, Fatty, hurry. The water in that bedroom is getting deeper and deeper and deeper. The water has risen to Fatty's shoulders. If they don't get out of that sinking room soon, Fido needn't bother delivering that note. Straight to the old homestead dashes gallant Fido. Fatty's father, aroused from slumber, quickly finds the note, which must have been written on waterproof paper. A cry for help, and the film shifts gears to the kind of chase climax that had become Keystone's trademark everywhere in the world, and which made all other moving pictures look like they were standing still. So Fatty and Mabel are rescued in this happiest of happy endings, which proves that true love will always triumph thanks to man's best friend, the dog. The villain is Wallace Beery, years before he became one of America's most beloved stars. The little heroine is Gloria Swanson, making her Hollywood debut in this hit comedy of 1917. The equally little hero is Bobby Vernon. Gloria, an heiress, loves Bobby, but she's in the clutches of her crooked guardian, Wicked Wallace. With his equally wicked sister, Beery receives word that the auditors are coming. It's prison bars, unless... By the night of the grand ball, Beery has hatched his dastardly plot. Bobby has been stolen away from Gloria by Beery's bouncing sister, who's a vampire of classic proportions. Once Sis marries Bobby, Wallace figures, he can grab off Gloria, and a wife can't testify against her husband. While in a secluded corner, Wally works his wicked wiles, Sis and Bobby go two-stepping in society. And Gloria was to become America's top box office star. For Wally, however, the pinnacle of success lay 15 years in the future. But in the meanwhile, Sis has a headlock on Bobby and is bound for the altar. Act fast, Gloria, or your love will be gone with the wind. At Keystone, when it stormed, it stormed. Gloria searches for Bobby. Wallace searches for Gloria. There are ways to stop even a woman from talking. Dawn's early light finds the groom still ungroomed. Arms vanish, and so have Sis's chances. But Beery's got Gloria. He sneaks. You can tell your story to the angels. The expresses do, and she's sure to catch it in the middle of the morning. Gloria has one chance. She'll summon her pet Teddy, the famous Keystone dog. Who could have guessed that this tiny girl chained to the tracks was to become the most glamorous of stars in that most glamorous of places, Hollywood, in that most glamorous of times, the 20s. Is pleased for help by dog mail. East hasn't increased the postal rate, and they're off in a mad race against the onrushing train. While Bobby makes love, Teddy takes action. In the old melodramas, if it weren't for dogs, there wouldn't have been a heroine left. Gloria emerges as clean as if they kept a washroom under cowcatcher, while Teddy rat job by tracking down the villain. Teddy gets Wally, Gloria gets Bobby, Sis gets jilted. So ends our story, as these happy lovers of the good old days at Keystone mount the locomotive and toot off into memory. High on a sheer cliff appears the second of Silent Comedy's 3 completely original clowns. White-faced Harry Langdon, the immortal, trustful baby in a wicked, wised-up world. In this Max Sennett comedy of 1924, Harry and Alice Day are blissful newlyweds sharing their first dish at the sink. Ah, thinks Harry, that must be the new cook. And the new cook is who it is. Angle Iron Annie, formerly pastry chef on Devil's Island, played by Louise Carver. Annie growls, "Where's the kitchen?" After dinner, Annie, drawing softly on her fish hair perfecto, puts away the dishes. Hollywood used to ask, who will replace Harry Langdon? In the quarter century since his passing, the answer has become clear. Nobody. Into this happy home pops a visitor, Homer Hardshake, a long-absent school chum who founded a successful career by stealing sandwiches out of Harry's lunchbox. Homer snuggles in on Harry's wife. And where's Harry? By providing the music, of course. It's Annie's boyfriend. "Come on over," says Annie. "We'll dance here." Harry Harry, on a suicide mission, prepares to fire the cook. Langdon rose rapidly to stardom. Then, at the height of his career, he turned, in films directed by himself, to a new, strange, offbeat kind of comedy, and even despair. It was like a trumpeter reaching for a celestial high note somewhere beyond human range. Audiences stopped laughing, and the little fellow slid into oblivion. Next morning, the second attack. Annie quits. She wasn't appreciated. Harry returns loaded down with household necessities, including a new cook, Fifi La Fluff, a kitchen slavey, played by Madeline Herlock. I picked her myself, says Harry. Oh my, purrs Fifi. You didn't tell me you were married. Get me the poor dear slippers, orders Fifi. Boy, she's good, whispers Harry. It's a stormy night outside and in. Fortune-telling Fifi sees dark happenings ahead. Meanwhile, sneaky Homer tells Alice that Harry was the 8th grade's worst playboy. Fifi switches to reading Harry's palm. He never had it so good. Alice asks Harry for a drink of water. And where's the water? Why, it's across that dark, spooky dining room in that dark, spooky kitchen. Fifi says goodnight, while Homer works to get Alice into his pudgy clutches. Did you ever have the feeling that you weren't entirely alone? He's right behind me. Go back and get him, says Homer. I'll stay here and protect your wife. In his 3 years with Sennett, Langdon created dozens of short masterpieces, most of which are forever lost. The film you are watching had already begun to decompose when it was copied barely in time to save it from extinction. one better expressed the spirit of silent comedy than the hesitant, wistful Langdon, who, as one critic put it, looked as if he wore diapers under his pants and had the face of a baby dope fiend. Enter wife and chum to witness the worst. "So," says Alice, "this is why you scared us into staying downstairs." For many a comedy fan, one of life's long-vanished pleasures is the sight of Langdon in bird-like panic, his hands full of swooning femininity. It's most annoying to have someone read over your shoulder. Another note. These must be the ghosts of departed mailmen. Your wife is about to leave the house with a dangerous criminal. Signed, The Tall, Dark Man. Sure enough, Homer has convinced Alice of Harry's unfaithfulness and is about to take her away from it all when, wham! The mystery explained. Homer is really Willie. Who's Dan? Who's Sam? Who's Melvin, the international criminal? As for Fifi, she's really Yvette. Who's Babette? Who's Laurent? Who's Sophie of the Secret Service? An exalted figure of the early 1920s was the inventor, who within a few years had brought the average man such wonders as the automobile, the motion picture, and the wireless radio. To these achievements, Hollywood added the feather alarm clock. Its creator, the misfit genius Snub Pollard, a puller of strings in a world that was to go in for push buttons. Since this Hal Roach comedy was filmed, we've filled our kitchens with gadgets. But no housewife today can make breakfast as slick and quick as Snub could back in 1923. This inventive picture, entitled It's a Gift, represented Pollard's finest moment. For soon new stars were to rise on the Roach lot, and Snub began the long spiral down. Today, all too few remember the brash little fellow with the Kaiser Wilhelm mustache worn upside down. The mailman arrives. Although regular airmail service was as yet unknown, all mail entered the Pollard house by air. It's a letter from the Onion Oil Company asking an immediate demonstration of Pollard's new super substitute for gasoline. Snub gets dressed and straightens his room in exactly 30 seconds. Count them. flick of the finger, Snub transforms garbage can into garage. Is your new car too long for your garage? Does it cost too much to run? Is it too big to park? Snub had all those problems licked back in the days when Harding was president. Oh, come with me, we'll travel far. Come with me in my magnet car. No gas to buy, no mechanics to see. The very last word in economy. In the park lake, a man is drowning, when on to the scene glides Snub. As the victim struggles, Pollard unveils his new secret weapon against Davy Jones, a pair of shoes for walking on water. It's an awe-inspiring moment. The policeman dons the shoes. The crowd is hushed. Pollard makes a few last-minute adjustments. Then, a step into history. Oh well, back to the old drawing board. Snub pulls up before the Onion Oil Company. The board of directors hastens to greet him. If Pollard's gasoline substitute proves successful, the only use for petroleum will be to grease pigs at county fairs. The finest cars 1923 had to offer have been assembled for the test. Snub passes around eyedroppers, then proudly produces a single test tube containing his miracle fluid, Moose, which is Zoom spelled backwards. 1 drop for ordinary cars, says Snub. A half drop for flivvers. A drop of Moose in every motor. An oil tycoon behind every wheel. Can Pollard's elixir possibly be powerful enough? Powerful enough? Goodness gracious. Snub, you made the stuff too strong. Snub's dreams of glory gone with a bang. Well, that winds up that experiment. Undaunted, Snub Pollard scoots back among the forgotten in one of the most graceful exits ever afforded a comedian. Straight out of the roaring 20s drive 2 drugstore cowboys and their flapper girlfriends. This Hal Roach comedy of 1928 was called A Pair of Tights, the tights being tightwads Stuart Irwin and Edgar Kennedy. Edgar is overjoyed when Marion Bryan suggests ice cream cones. Just the thing to spoil their appetites for dinner. Yes, these were the 20s, an era of close hats, prohibition, the lost generation, and, just like today, no place to park. Notice how in this classic comedy, a few simple plot threads are woven into a tapestry of humor. One thread is the cop. Another is Marion and the ice cream. Edgar Kennedy, around since the movie's earliest days, was one of the original Keystone Cops. But he never caught the public's fancy until late in the 20s, when he developed his magnificent slow burn. Once again, The Cop. A Pair of Tights is that rarest and purest of silent comedies, one that tells its story completely visually without the need of dialogue, titles, or a single word of explanation. Such comedies soared above the language barrier and carried laughter from America everywhere on earth. True, we've had short skirts since then, but never skirts so delightfully short, nor girls so cute as in the breezy 20s. Enter a new character, the Fresh Kid. Hey, Dad, throw me another nickel. I'll handle this, says the girlfriend. She's Anita Garvin, whom some of you may remember as the gal who sat on the pie in the golden age of comedy. Edgar's face beautifully reflects the shifting tide of battle. No little shrimp is going to smack his girl around. From behind steel bars, a boy hears those old familiar words of love from the girl of his dreams. Make good or don't bother to come around. The boy is Buster Keaton, the third of the three great and completely original comedy talents to rise in splendor during comedy's golden age. Chaplin was the tramp, Langdon was the baby, Keaton was the great stone face around whose impassive figure mad havoc roared like debris around the dead eye of a hurricane. Gentle, helpful Buster was always meeting up with the unappreciative oaths of life. His revenge was usually swift and sardonic, but it seemed to happen mainly by chance. From Mark Twain to Will Rogers, America has had many dry wits whose humor sprang from words. Buster Keaton remains its only dry, visual comedian. A cop. Determined to succeed, Buster takes on his first client, a man who wants to move his household furnishings. The most mechanically inventive of all comedians, Keaton had for every problem a solution completely insane, yet somehow practical. Hearts quicken on this day of days, the day of the annual policeman's parade. The mayor and his daughter, look, it's Buster's girlfriend, preside from the reviewing stand. Now into those brave ranks of marching blue, an added starter. On the roof above, an anarchist. As Buster looks for a light, this relic of the early 20s lets go with a homemade bomb. Through everything, in the words of James Agee, greatest of movie critics, Keaton carried a face as still and as sad as a daguerreotype. My, says Buster's client, do you suppose anything could have happened to our furniture? Well, he continues, can't wait any longer. Got to go to work. Another cop. The mayor bawls out his orders to the chief. The proudest police force in all the land has but a single mission: get Buster. Keaton began his career at the age of 3 as one of the Three Keatons, a burlesque acrobatic act in which his mother and dad attached a handle to the youngster and threw him around the stage like a human medicine ball. Thanks to this airborne childhood, he brought to the silent screen the talents of both acrobat and clown. That's queer, muses Buster's client. That pile of smashed up junk looks just like my furniture. Summing up all the lack of understanding with which woman has greeted man's efforts since time's beginning, Buster's girl gives him the fisheye. Jilted. From out of a white wilderness where 'neath northern lights men muck for gold, mushes a mishmash of muskies. In 1924, Hollywood embarked on a cycle of far north melodramas. And soon, who should be galumping across the frozen wastes but that master of sledgehammer satire, Ben Turpin. Here, Ben portrays Nudnik of the North, the only prospector of 98 flat on his back. North of 57, Lord preserve us, what a pickle. And what a free plug. The weary prospector collapses. Then, in the unearthly stillness, weird happenings. Now, what would you expect to emerge from those igloos? If this were a modern picture, it would be monsters. In 1912, the Senate girls brought cheesecake to the screen and popularized the one-piece bathing suit. From their ranks rose such stars as Gloria Swanson, Phyllis Haver, Bebe Daniels, Sally Eilers, and Marie Prevost. Names that brightened a time when those of us who are old were young, and those of us who are young had not yet been born. In slapstick, as in life, for every sweet dream, there's bound to be a rude awakening. And so it is that Ben Turpin bows out of our picture, obeying a prime rule of silent screen comedians: exit running. 30 years later, Mack Sennett, the old master himself, was to look back at his wacky world of old and wonder, what has happened to laughter? There used to be so much of it. It was Mack Sennett who polished to perfection the chase, an art form which belongs exclusively to the motion picture camera, with its unique ability to speed up or slow down life and to banish all barriers of time and space. In this surrealistic world of careening objects, it mattered little who was chasing whom and why, as long as the pace never faltered and the imagination never flagged. Perhaps the funniest sight gags were those which might almost really happen, like Billy Bevan pushing his broken-down jalopy and innocently picking up every other car along the curb. Goodness, says Billy, who never looked where he was going. My car is getting heavier and heavier. This episode, incidentally, was created by a Mack Sennett gag writer named Frank Capra, later to win 3 Academy Awards as a director. It's a fine example of how silent screen comedy was constructed to progress from titter to yowl to belly laugh to boffo. Another Sennett sight gag favorite was the comedy of surprise, a delightful form of humor as rare today as a celluloid collar. In this example, the peeper is Billy Bavan. The peeped upon, Madeline Herlock, one of the loveliest of the Sennett girls. The outraged Billy can stand no more. And here we come upon another Sennett trademark. Gag piled upon gag in action so fast that the audience is dazzled. "Help!" cries Billy. "Drop your nickel," says the operator. In charges Ruth Hyatt with a secret paper. Behind comes Cupid Morgan, the arch villain. At stake is a plan for making clam chowder out of codfish heads, a priceless formula that enemy powers will stop at nothing to possess. The stage is set for another Mack Sennett chase. Billy has climbed out of many a bedroom window, but never before in the cause of clam chowder. Billy's friend, Andy Clyde, runs for help to the most famous police force of them all. Crafty Mack Sennett knew that the deflation of authority and dignity drew the biggest laughs, and that the old-time policeman was the symbol of authority and dignity. His creation, combining the greatest of zeal with the utmost in incompetence, became immortal, the Keystone Cops. a forlorn, forgotten boulevard drive two comedians who produced more laughter than any others, yet whose greatness was not recognized until the twilight of their lives. In an editorial, the New York Times was to think of skinny Laurel playing against fat Hardy as a bow plays against a fiddle, and to recall the gay, ingenious music. But that was after Oliver Hardy could no longer hear the applause. In 1929, Laurel and Hardy, portraying Christmas tree salesmen in sunny California, bumbled head-on into Jimmy Finlayson, a canny Scot comedian who looked eternally like he'd been weaned on a pickle. The result was a little film called Big Business, regarded today as one of the comedy classics of the silent screen. Big Business was made by some of the finest talents Hollywood has known. Its supervising director was Leo McCarey, who went on to win an Academy Award for The Awful Truth, and 2 Academy Awards for writing and directing Going My Way. Its cameraman was 2-time Academy Award winner George Stevens, later to direct such masterpieces as A Place in the Sun, Shane, Giant, and The Diary of Anne Frank. With the unalterable force of Greek tragedy, Big Business moves from misunderstanding to quarrel, to spat, to fight, to battle, to campaign, to war, to Armageddon. Its comedy is wild, yet so deep is its understanding of man's foolish ferocity, and so firm its contact with logic and reality, that it leaves the spectator with the uneasy feeling that not only could all this happen, it could happen to him. Thank goodness a policeman to put an end to this madness. Cautiously, the arm of the law sizes up the situation. The first rule of modern policemanship: make a complete report. The law takes firm command. Now, says the cop, who started all this? It was all a misunderstanding, ball cop. Make up and be friends. The characters, Laura, they were bumbling, accident-prone incompetents upon whom havoc settled at the simplest act. Beneath this, among others, were layers of daunt dignity, hopeless heroism, and wistful sadness, with deepest of all ended the concert. And the world beginning to realize how much it loved Fat Oliver and Skid Stan. So ends our visit to the era of the great silent clowns, who mass-produced laughter and happiness, and who passed into oblivion just before the years when the world needed them most.